This video is going to talk about understanding the grooming process. And I guess one of the reasons that I'm interested in talking to you about this is because there's a lot of misinformation about grooming and also quite a lot of assumptions. Lots and lots of people who've been subjected to sexual violence, whether they're children or adults, have been given some really dodgy advice about grooming and about how it happens, what it means, how to spot it and things like that. And actually I come at it from a completely different angle, which won't surprise any of you, I imagine. I actually think that we should talk about grooming not only as an individual process, but also as a process that we're taken through every day since birth. I've worked with so many people who will say to me, how did I not see what they were doing to me? How could I, now looking back on it, it's so obvious. You know, they were saying these things, they were giving me these things, they were doing these things. Why did I not notice that this is what was happening to me? And I actually don't think most of us do. No. And I think that's normal. But I have a reason for why I think that. So I think one of the things that's happening that's not very helpful at the moment in our field, from the way professionals are being taught, but also the way the public and children are being taught, is that grooming is something that offenders do, and that these horrible, intelligent, insidious, narcissistic people groom us, okay? And whilst I don't disagree with that, I actually think that we groom each other all the time. I think grooming is a natural, normal process that we use on each other constantly. That's why we can't figure it out when we're being groomed for a bad thing like abuse. So I'll talk to you a bit about that. So grooming is a social behaviour. It's something we do to manipulate each other. Now, I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way, because, for example, we groom children into sitting quietly at school. We also groom each other into relationships. We groom our friends. We find out all about them. We ask them questions. We are nice to them. We do nice things for them to earn their respect or to earn their trust. Grooming is a process we've taken our partners through. So those of you that are in a relationship, you've both groomed each other. Otherwise, how did that happen? You now talk to each other about things that you would never have spoken to them about when they were a stranger. You give each other gifts. You do nice things for each other. You do things in return for stuff. And grooming, you know, is part of that. That's a grooming behaviour. We are groomed from birth. We're groomed by our parents to behave in particular ways, and all over the world we're groomed differently. So what one behaviour might be normal to be groomed to do in Japan might not be a behaviour that would be seen as normal to be groomed to do here. It's like that all over the world. And so we are grooming children from birth to behave in particular ways, to look a particular way, to dress a particular way, to think a particular way. And we do that all the way through our lives. We do it to our own kids, friends, we do it to ourselves. This society does it to us. The fashion industry grooms us, makeup industry grooms us, the IT industry grooms us, you know, the car industry grooms us. We are groomed constantly, all the time, into thinking a particular way, or into acting a particular way, to buying something, to going somewhere, to spending our money, to sending our kids to school, to put them in a uniform, to, you know. How do you think you learned at school that you had to put your hand up to ask a question? That is a behaviour that is not actually required to ask a question, is it? So, you know, if I was with my friends, I don't sort of raise my hand and wait for them to answer me. I was groomed into that behaviour at school, though, because I knew that the adults had told me repeatedly that if you don't put your hand up, you're not allowed to ask a question. You are allowed to ask a question. There's no law against that, but you're groomed to believe it's true. So then you behave in that particular way. So if you think about how much you've been groomed in your life by your teachers, by your parents, by your friends, by your partner, when you are then groomed by an offender who is doing that deliberately to harm you, why would you notice? If this is something in society that is a behaviour that's repeated and is throughout your life, is completely normal, you are, you know, groomed for good things sometimes. So you might have been groomed to go to sixth form or university. You might have been groomed to go and lose weight. You might have been groomed to stop smoking by somebody in your life who spent a lot of time talking to you about it and convincing you and things like that, right? If those behaviours are so normal in society, why would you have figured out that this new person in your life was grooming you because eventually they were going to harm you? You wouldn't, because they're using the same tactics as everybody else is. They're asking you questions, they're building rapport, they're being nice to you, maybe they're giving you gifts, taking you places, maybe they are telling you you're special, maybe they're telling you they care about you and that they're in love with you. They're using all the same tactics that would be used in a healthy relationship, and that's why we can't figure out the difference. And that's completely normal. So this is one of the things that I would, you know, if you were with me and we were doing this one-to-one, this is something that we would be talking about a lot, I think, because on that basis, you know, you weren't groomed because you're stupid. You weren't groomed because you should have seen it coming. You weren't groomed because you're naive or too trusting or because you don't understand offenders. You were groomed because it's a normal everyday behaviour. It's just that some people use it to harm other people. Grooming is used in radicalisation and extremism. It's used in violence. It's used in war. It's used in oppression. It's used in victim blaming. It's used in rape, abuse, exploitation, incest, ritual abuse. Grooming is used as a social tactic by the people who want to harm people and by the people who don't. It is something that we're all capable of doing. So I feel one of the biggest mistakes we made was trying to convince people that grooming was just something that offenders do, because then what you do is you believe that there's something special about offenders, that they're more intelligent than everyone else, that they're better at grooming people than everyone else. But it's actually that their intention is different. Because if you, I don't know, have ever been to see an amazing public speaker, or you were completely influenced by your university lecturer, or you had a teacher at school that really changed your behaviours and your way of looking at things, then you were groomed. But they weren't grooming you because they wanted to harm you. They were grooming you for another reason. It's just that other people who want to harm others, and that's why they want to use that social tactic, will use it in that way. So it is not your fault that you didn't figure it out. You wouldn't have seen it coming. None of us do. And I want to finish this video on just this point. I hear a lot of people who've been subjected to sexual violence saying things to me like, you know, professionals are telling me that I need to protect myself, that I need to be able to spot the signs of grooming and things like that. And I want to say this to you. Professionals can't spot the signs of grooming. We're terrible at it. That's why we fail so many people. That's why it's so hard for us, you know, to get these cases right with children or with adults. Also, research has shown that the prevalence of domestic and sexual violence in social workers, police officers, people in the military is exactly the same as the general public. If not, in some cases, it's actually higher. So we know that in police, in people that, you know, people who work in the police forces, they actually have higher incidences of domestic violence than other professions. So if the people who are supposed to be, you know, the experts are still being abused, they're still potentially, you know, in really dangerous relationships when they go home at night, they're still at risk from offenders harming them. This isn't about whether you're smart or not. This isn't about how much education you've got. This is because everybody is being groomed. And therefore, even the professionals that think they can spot the signs often can't, because they're living in it as well. So never feel like this is something you should have figured out. The point of grooming is that manipulation, that careful manipulation, that means that not only can you not figure it out, but even when you do eventually figure it out, you're so stuck there and so scared from that process that you've been taken through that you don't feel like you can get out, and that's how they hold you there. So yeah, this is really important, I think, for people to understand. This isn't about the fact that you should have known. You shouldn't have known. How could you have known? If even psychologists, social workers, police officers, they don't know either. That we miss the signs of grooming all the time, and you know, this is what lots of us do day in, day out. When you know, it's very, very difficult to pick up a social human behaviour that's actually so embedded into normal communication and relationships that we're not 100% sure when it is grooming or when it's not. So yeah, that, you know, that's what I wanted to tell you really about grooming. So, you know, I hope that's I hope that gives you something to think about. And, you know, I don't want you to feel like you should have seen it coming or that you should have known.